Episode 1. Xin Haoyue dragged her tired body and her large pink suitcase out the elevator, her complexion noticeably haggard. She had been on a business trip for nearly a month and had not been able to sleep well day and night, but what she couldn't stand most was that despicable baldy CEO with the round belly. Every night, she did her best to build a good professional relationship with his business partner. However, one time during a toast, she was pushed aside while being ridiculed that her body was no use. Since she can't get drunk, the man said he preferred a beautiful woman to drink beside him. At that point, Xin Haoyue, who seldom drank wine since childhood, gritted her teeth and forced herself to smile at those disgusting faces. She reluctantly swallowed one cup of wine after the other until she ended up feeling nauseous. Her eyes turned red as she vomited at the hotel room's bathroom. Recalling how those filthy beasts took advantage of the dim restaurant and touched her thighs, she wanted to curse at their family's 18 generations for thousands of times over. Humph. When this miss recovers, she'll make sure they'll wish they were dead. When Xin Haoyue thought of those despicable faces and her own helplessness, her face scowled even deeper. But soon, a glint flashed through her eyes. Even though her days have been difficult, hasn't she survived? What was she afraid of? She smiled once again and slid the hair on her cheeks behind her ears. If the project becomes a success, she might have a brighter future in the company. Now that her task was over, the number of unpleasant meals will be reduced. Well, most importantly, she can go home and surprise Lin Hui. In the past, the Xin family fell apart. Her parents died. Her brother had completely disappeared to who knows where. And a series of bad luck had befallen her since then. Thankfully, Lin Hui never abandoned her. He didn't even mind that she had nothing. The two of them applied for a marriage license and soon became husband and wife. Everything happened so fast while maintaining a low-key reputation. Although their marriage life wasn't wealthy, they had great joy in each other's company. Even in poverty, their times together were very beautiful. Xin Haoyue tried to display her brightest smile as she opened the door lightly, but her smile suddenly froze the moment she saw clothes scattered across the hallway leading towards the bedroom. Suit, coat, tie, a long-sleeved shirt, a woman's white bra, denim shorts, black underwear. Xin Haoyue's face, which had been slightly pale, became even paler in an instant. Her eyes were fixed on the closed door to the bedroom. There was poor sound insulation through the walls. She stood stiff in her place as she heard a woman's groans and whispers. Slow down. Pain. Hey, slow down, hurry up. You little devil. The growling man's voice was full of joy. Whose voice could that be other than Lin Hui? Mr. Lin, it seems that your wife has no ability to satisfy you. Why mention that, bitch? If she wasn't the precious young miss of the Xin family, do you think I would have married her? I just thought that Chen Xinan would let me off if I married into the Xin family. But who would have thought his grudge would go so deep that he wouldn't even consider his old relationship with the Xin family? To think he would directly uproot their foundations which had been prosperous for the past 100 years. Now, they've fallen into misfortune. Xin Haoyue could only feel herself go cold. She gritted her teeth, clenched her fist, and stepped forward, when she suddenly heard Lin Hui sarcastically say, "How can her bed technique be as good as yours? Every time I move, she cries out in pain, saying it hurts while calling me a bastard. Woman, I haven't even made my move." Lin Hui, you bastard. Unable to bear it any longer, Xin Haoyue pushed the door open while cursing his name. She went straight in and without a word grabbed a glass bottle not far from the door, then smashed it towards the back of Lin Hui's head while he lay on top of some unknown woman. Upon hearing the newcomer's voice, Lin Hui immediately turned around and saw Xin Haoyue, who had a fierce and murderous expression. The man quickly raised his hand and blocked the glass bottle. Xin Haoyue huffed and once again advanced, but the bottle was soon snatched from her hand directly. Xin Haoyue, you're insane. Yes, I'm definitely insane. I was crazy for treating you like a human being. She always thought that she had found hope in the Low Valley, but in the end, all her hope was placed on a scum worse than a beast. Well, if I'm not human, then you're certainly no different. Who in Shenzhen City doesn't know how shameless and cheap you were when you chased Chen Xinan? In the end, you've been thrown away like trash. Yes, just as you want to smash my head, I also want to throw you away. Xin Haoyue glanced at the despicable woman who was wrapping herself in a bathrobe by the bedside, obviously enjoying their drama on the sidelines. At such a sight, her temper rose again, and she lifted her hand to slap Lin Hui on the face. The man gritted his teeth and cursed at the mad woman who wanted to retaliate. He raised the glass bottle and smashed it against her head without any remorse. As the crisp sound of shattering reverberated, Xin Haoyue could only hear a buzz in her head. As she slowly fell, she saw many scenes in her mind, frame by frame. She recalled her college days when she relentlessly chased after Chen Xinan despite his cold rejection. She thought of her parents and brother who died tragically. Those days she was once that bright, carefree, and arrogant girl who had all the delicacies and clothing. However, none of these will ever return. Before dying, she heard that disgusting woman speak with a concerned voice. "Oh no, you killed your wife. What are you afraid of? Help me tidy up the scene." Remember, she slipped and fell on her own and her head hit the bottle. Then she bled so much that she died. You better not talk too much, or else you won't get away with it. Before the last of Xin Haoyue's consciousness disappeared, she simply felt that her retribution this lifetime was truly deserved, and thus had no regrets dying. After all, what's the use of regret? Xin Haoyue couldn't have Chen Xinan for herself. She wanted to tear apart that Sheng Wenyang, but as a result, that woman ended up in a wedding dress while she herself was forced to walk the road to hell. This is the end of my life. Maybe not long after, no one will remember my existence. End of story. After reading the ending, Xin Haoyue sighed heavily and closed the book solemnly. For some reason, she only felt as if her heart weighed down. After work that afternoon, she visited the bookstore to find a romance novel to read. Upon discovering a novel whose villainess shared the same name as hers, she immediately opened its pages and began reading in excitement. She just never expected the ending to be so tragic. Most of the plot consisted of intense, dog-blooded drama. Sheng Wenyang, the novel's female protagonist, started out as an ordinary girl. Because of her excellent academic performance, exceptional temperament, and her many chance encounters with the male protagonist, they gradually began to develop feelings towards each other. However, the woman prioritized her career ambition. Sheng Wenyang had always hoped to break free of the world's traditions and become equally matched with her man by gaining the strength to withstand the wind and storm of the business world. Thus, she leaves Chen Xinan and goes abroad without saying a word. After Xin Haoyue meets the male protagonist and falls in love with him at first sight, she tries every means to win his heart. Whenever the opportunity presented itself, she would deliberately approach him. However, for these few years up until the female protagonist's return, Xin Haoyue never managed to catch the man's sight. Unable to stand for this, the villainess pointed all her spears at the female protagonist, setting up traps everywhere while abusing her. Naturally, Sheng Wenyang, with her main character Halo, always managed to escape danger with the help of the male protagonist. The couple's feelings would grow deeper with time, while Chen Xinan would come to abhor the villainess even more. Near the end of the novel, Chen Xinan was completely enraged when the villainous husband Lin Hui caused Sheng Wenyang to miscarry her 1-month-old baby. Within half a month, the Xin family and their company went bankrupt, and both Xin parents committed suicide in tears. Xin Haoyue lived for less than a year before dying miserably. For some reason, the reader Xin Haoyue was in a sour mood after reading the novel, perhaps because she shared the same name as that woman. Her name was obviously very special. How could a villainess be given the same name as her? Although the woman's fate was miserable and the male and female protagonists won a happy ending as expected, Xin Haoyue wasn't happy at all. The more she read this book, the more her heart felt choked. Suddenly, she stood up, picked up the book, and put on her slippers before walking out of the room. Better take this out of my sight so I can forget about it. She had this thought as she hurried down the stairs. Without paying attention to her feet, Xin Haoyue felt her slippers accidentally slip off a step, and her whole body soon rolled down the stairs. Her efforts to save herself were futile. It took a while before her body stopped falling down the steps and excruciating pain enveloped her. Her eyelashes trembled, and she could barely see the book spread open in front of her. The text bled so much that she died, was stained with red blood. The wet sensation seemed to spread from the back of her head. Before Xin Haoyue could think of her life this past month, her vision blacked out and she fainted. "Susi, are you awake?" Xin Haoyue woke up in a daze. Hearing someone call out her name, she struggled to open her eyes when an intense pain throbbed at the back of her head. She recalled that just before, she was so angry that she decided to throw away her novel. Instead, she rolled straight down the stairs, probably knocking her head against the sharp edges of the stairs' corners. "Damn it, it hurts." She subconsciously frowned from the pain. A woman's happy voice rang out. "She's awake! Hurry and call a doctor!" Xin Haoyue slowly tried to open her eyes, but all she could see was the vague image of a middle-aged woman with delicate makeup. She seemed to be looking at her with worry. "Haoyue, are you finally awake? You scared mother to death." Xin Haoyue's eyes narrowed. No. How can she be my mother? My mom was obviously a country woman. She would never wear makeup with elegant clothes. I must be hallucinating. Xin Haoyue closed her eyes and went back to sleep. It seemed to be late at night by the time she woke up once again. As she looked up, the brilliant crystal chandelier up ahead was just too dazzling. Xin Haoyue unconsciously reached out her hand to shield her eyes from the bright light, but someone suddenly caught her wrist. Then, she heard a steady male voice say, "Don't move. Your arm is attached to the IV drip." Somewhat puzzled, Xin Haoyue woke up properly and looked at the stranger beside her. "You are?" At her question, the handsome young man stiffly stared at her before scolding. "Who am I? I'm your brother." Brother? No, she should be an only child. Of course, illegitimate children outside her father's marriage can't be counted. Xin Haoyue was very confused at this moment. The more she tried to think, the more painful her head felt. Noticing her pale face, Xin Chen composed himself and solemnly asked, "You don't know who I am? Huh? Do you know what your name is?" She replied without even thinking. "Xin Haoyue." The man touched her forehead and happily said, "Well, it seems that you haven't completely gone stupid. I'm Xin Chen, your brother." Xin Chancheng, why does that name sound familiar? Xin Haoyue suddenly recalled. This was a name that appeared several times in the novel, the villainous brother. No way. What just happened? Xin Haoyue painstakingly tried to recall. What city did the female and male protagonists live in again? Sheng, what? She remembered how the author liked the female protagonist so much that the first word for the city's name was also the same as the protagonist's last name. That's right, Xin Haoyue asked in a hurry. Is this Shenzhen City? Xin Chancheng carefully observed her, but after a while, her eyes were still inquisitive and clear. Seems like this wasn't a prank, so he could only nod. Xin Haoyue suddenly felt helpless out of fear. She closed her eyes in defeat. Yes. She actually transmigrated over into a novel as the villainess who was headed straight for a tragic ending. Xin Haoyue wondered where the plot was at during this timeline. She asked her brother, "How old am I now?" Xin Chancheng raised a brow and asked seriously this time, "You really don't remember?" Xin Haoyue nodded, but immediately shook her head once again. Her brother asked impatiently, "What do you mean by nodding and shaking your head?" "I only recall my name and some other vague details. For example, I'm the eldest daughter of the Xin family. I know this is Shenzhen City, and also..." Xin Haoyue wanted to share a few other information regarding the villainess in the book, but she wasn't sure of her present circumstances and could only do her best to avoid arousing suspicion. So she changed the topic and said, "I only remember these details, but I can't recall the rest." Xin Cheng's brows knitted deeply as he considered her words. After pondering about it for a while, he said, "Go to bed first. I'll call the doctor to see you." "Okay, thanks, brother." Xin Cheng, who was about to turn and leave, suddenly stopped on his tracks and stared back at her doubtfully for 2 seconds. Finally, he walked out of the room with a disconcerted look. Weird. How can falling down the stairs make her act so strange? Since when did my sister treat others so politely? Did her brain really break down this time? She already wasn't very smart in the beginning. If we don't prevent it from degrading any further, who knows what disaster will come? At this thought, Xin Chancheng's pace quickened. Upon seeing the man slip away so quickly, Xin Haoyue laid back in bed and sighed in her heart. The former Xin Haoyue of the novel had such a temper that not even her brother was willing to be close to her. Although there weren't many descriptions of Xin Chancheng in the book, it's not difficult to see that he was a smart and capable person. He was able to run most of the Xin family's businesses at such a young age, but he was later implicated due to the villainous deeds. She recalled a scene in the novel, right after the villainess had succeeded in plotting Sheng Wenyang's miscarriage. Outside the operating room, Chen Xinan, who had always maintained a calm and composed demeanor, now wrapped his fingers around the villainous neck with one hand and viciously warned, "If something happens to her, I'll definitely bury your corpse with her." She also recalled the author's description. For the first time, Xin Haoyue felt a deep fear from the murderous aura that emanated from Chen Xinan's body. It was as if his cold hands could tighten its grasp mercilessly around her throat at any moment, easily taking away her life. She wanted to struggle against him, but did not have even half the strength to resist. Finally, Xin Chancheng rushed into the hall in a hurry. Giving his sister a chance to live, Xin Chancheng walked behind Chen Xinan and ordered in a chilling voice, "Chen Xinan, you'd better let her go this instant." Chen Xinan simply replied, "And if I say no, then I won't let you rest, even if I have to use all of our Xin family resources." Chen Xinan sneered and replied without shame, "I'd like to see who it is between us who will have no time of peace." After that, he pushed the villainess away, causing Xin Haoyue to hit the wall behind her. Her eyes burst into tears as she heard Chen Xinan's parting words with a cold warning. "Xin Haoyue, just wait, I'll have you pay off your debts." Chen Xinan threatened her to stay out of his sight. As she sobbed on the floor, Xin Chancheng swatted down next to her and lifted her up. He advised, "I told you before that he's not the man for you. Chen Xinan is not the kind of person you can force or keep by your side. Now you finally know, right?" His sister cried so hard that her tears fell like rain. She retorted fiercely, "But what can I do? I just love him." Xin Chancheng's face darkened and he looked at her silently. "The man isn't interested in you at all, even after all you've done to pursue him." He was quite clear in expressing his rejection. In that case, why not let go and just live freely? The current Xin Haoyue also felt some sympathy for Xin Chancheng at that time. In fact, there was nothing he could do to convince such a stubborn person. With these thoughts, Xin Haoyue drifted off to sleep. By the time she woke up again, it was early in the morning. This time, the person sitting in front of the bed was the villainous beautiful mother. Xin Haoyue considered that since she had transmigrated into the world, she had yet to find a way to return back to her own. There is the saying, only those who recognize the trends of the times can become outstanding figures. Perhaps the way for her to return was by letting nature take its course and simply wait for the male and female protagonists to write their happy ending. Whatever happens after that is none of her business. But before the ending, she must reduce her already small sense of existence and not get entangled with them. That way, everything should turn out fine, right? As for the villainous tragic end at the male protagonist's hands, she believed that this was no longer a problem. Why? Because she wasn't the real Xin Haoyue. and the current her had no feelings for Chen Xinan whatsoever. While she was deep in thought, her mother gave a long sigh. Siwei, there are so many good men in the world. Although that Chen kid is exceptional, you are the eldest daughter of our Xin family, meaning there is a long line of excellent men waiting for you in the future, and who knows if your tastes change someday. Let's not pursue this any longer. Upon hearing this remark, she silently thought to herself, wow, with this kind of mother, the villainess really wasn't worthy of her own parents. But maybe it's not so good that she's boasting about her daughter too much? Then the next second, Xin Siwei's thoughts were thrown in turmoil. Wait, does that mean the villainess already knows of Chen Xinan at this point? So she's already in college? Mom, Xin Siwei asked weakly, how old am I right now? Mother Xin gazed at her with incredulity and asked, did you really forget everything? I forgot, Xin Siwei nodded. Well, if her daughter has forgotten everything, then that must include Chen Xinan, since they will simply meet as strangers in the future. It's all for the best. With a complicated look on her face, Mother Xin immediately called for the doctor. After the doctor examined her, his lines were no different from those in a drama series. Based on her circumstances, it is presumed that her concussion led to a partial loss of memory. What do you mean? Mother Xin asked anxiously. To put it simply, it's amnesia. It was Xin Haoyue who said this before the doctor could open his mouth. Left speechless, the physician couldn't help but glance at her. Meanwhile, faced with the man's unspeakable look, Xin Haoyue laughed and said, Doctor, I'm very much aware of my health. Mother Xin, who didn't know what words to say for a while, finally said, You mean amnesia? The doctor looked at Xin Haoyue helplessly and nodded. Mother Xin's eyes reddened as she looked at her daughter's tearless face. Her heart ached for her child. Xin Haoyue mentally rolled her eyes. What was she worried about? It's not like this condition was a terminal disease, plus she didn't actually have amnesia. Actually, she knew way too much when it comes to the plot, but right now, she couldn't name people based on their faces. That's why she still needed to use amnesia as an excuse. Xin Haoyue made up her mind to carry out her amnesia act till the end, so she quietly comforted her mother. Mom, even though I have amnesia, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm still in good health, aren't I? What's better than living in peace and security right now? You can tell me more about the past, and who knows, maybe I'll recall everything after you give me some time. Even if I can't remember, I don't think it's a big issue. So Mom, don't be sad. I'm all right. Mother Xin's eyes gradually showed a hint of incredulity and horror at her daughter's words of comfort. Since when did her daughter comfort her so obediently, rather than lash out? The only way she can calm her mind was by reasoning that perhaps her daughter has now become sensible after falling down those stairs. Well, it's good that she's safe and healthy, so nothing else should matter. The confusion on Mother Xin's face cleared up at once, which caused Xin Haoyue to sigh in relief. Yes, good. I successfully made it through. At any rate, even if some unfortunate event was waiting for her in the future, everyone will know now that she lost her memory. That way, they won't pursue her misdeeds to the end. Xin Haoyue spent the next half of the month taking good care of herself. She listened as her family members took turns trying to tell her of her experiences, along with all kinds of important and minor details, day after day. But out of all the information, there were only two details that Xin Haoyue considered useful. One is that her father was Xin Jin, and the other is that her mother was Bai Ning. These things were never mentioned in the novel. When the original author mentioned their suicide, she simply called them Father Xin and Mother Xin. Out of the past several days she has stayed with them, she truly felt like a daughter who was doted on by her elders. They sincerely wanted to give her everything she asked for. And although Xin Shancheng occasionally showed a bad attitude towards her, his tone layered with impatience, she could still feel the man's love for his only sister. He simply wasn't good at expressing it. In times when Xin Haoyue was alone, she always felt that if she lived this way in the real world, it would surely be the kind of life that everyone envies. Her present family's economic standing was superior, and there was family love and harmony. Xin Haoyue's current physical health gave her many advantages that she never had in her past life. Back in her world, she was born in the countryside, to a poor family. Her mother wasn't in good health while her father was an undisciplined and profligate man. They quarreled with each other all year round, sometimes so fiercely that no one else could stop them. After Xin Haoyue graduated from high school, her parents soon divorced. She then went on to college and attended part-time, and soon after her graduation, she went on to poor primary schools among the mountains to teach. However, Xin Haoyue never expected that before she could complete 2 years of teaching, she suddenly transmigrated into a novel. In fact, she was still quite confused right now. In the end, was her previous life real, or was her present life the actual real thing? How can such a strange event be possible? Over time, she convinced herself to accept it. Rather than waking up every morning with a panic-stricken face, checking her surroundings to see whether she has left the novel world and returned back to her own world, it was better to get used to her situation. In addition, she also learned from her family that she was now at her sophomore year on her second semester. Xin Haoyue knew that the villainess originally aimed for a dance major, but later changed it to the art department to chase after Chen Xinan. That's because right next to the art department was the construction and engineering department, which Chen Xinan attended. 2 days before going to school, Xin Haoyue considered the fact that she personally had no talent for drawing. Was it too late for her to switch departments now? Will she be able to do it? Xin Haoyue's questions were answered the day she returned to school. After Xin Chuncheng drove her to her college, he paid the dean's office a visit for 10 minutes before walking out the door and handing over a piece of paper to her directly. It was a written consent on transferring her department. Below was the dean's signature along with the school's bright red seal. Xin Haoyue was shocked, silly. Was it so easy to change departments in this era? And wasn't she in the second semester of her sophomore year? Seeing his own sister wide-eyed with surprise, such a straightforward expression left Xin Chuncheng feeling helpless. Although it was a little unpleasant back then to see her unrestrained arrogance, her current expression was also annoying to look at. Yes, he was smart, but what should he do about his own sister's lack of brain cells? Xin Chuncheng had to lower his pride as he finally explained things to her in a dignified manner. Half of the investments in this school comes from our Xin family. If you want to change departments, it's simply a matter of saying one sentence. After saying so, he privately thought to himself, the fact that I came here personally was more than enough to show the dean some respect. Xin Haoyue clicked her tongue and said half-jokingly, sure enough, with money, even ghosts will be willing to do the grinding for you. Tian, Chinese idiom, as long as you have the money, someone will always be willing to do the job for you. Then you're the one bribing the ghosts, said Xin Chuncheng good-naturedly. He knew that she intentionally made fun of him, so he replied in a good mood. Just before he could finish his sentence, he looked up slightly and noticed a young man approaching, not far away. Chen Xinan wore a white short-sleeved shirt with one hand lazily resting in his pockets. He walked onwards without a care, and with each step, the aura of a young master could not be denied. Xin Haoyue was curious as to why her brother suddenly looked so defensive. When she turned around to follow his line of sight, she immediately noticed an attractive, beautiful man. What the hell? He's as handsome as a dead devil. Although she cried out in her heart, she couldn't look away. At this time, Xin Chuncheng pulled her hand and dragged her forward. Let's go. It was a simple and concise command. Xin Haoyue hurriedly looked back at her brother with some wonder. It's not like they encountered a monster. What was he in such a hurry for? Do the both of them have some kind of grudge? As she thought of this, Xin Haoyue happened to brush past the man, but then immediately noticed those thick brows, beautiful phoenix eyes, and his high-bridged nose. Complemented with his perfectly smooth and white skin, this was truly a stunning man. Xin Haoyue nodded unconsciously as she assessed this person's appearance in her mind. Strangely enough, after she nodded her head, the handsome passerby released a sullen aura, as if wanting to keep her far out of his way. Xin Haoyue was confused. It's not like she was trying to get close to him. She simply nodded at him. It was subconscious. Did that stranger misunderstand something? Brother, is he your enemy? Xin Haoyue changed the topic to indirectly express her innocence. She really didn't do anything wrong. Upon hearing this, Xin Chuncheng ceased to pull her forward and immediately stopped on his tracks. He turned around to stare at Haoyue, then glanced back up at the other guy, but this time with a smile. This was the first time Xin Haoyue saw him smile so openly after coming to this world. Suddenly, she felt a little frightened. Why did she have a bad feeling? Unexpectedly, Xin Chuncheng pointed at the handsome man who continued to walk away, then deliberately said in a loud voice, What, you don't know him? Xin Haoyue shook her head. Is he someone I know? Satisfied with her answer, Xin Chuncheng grinned once again and said meaningfully, No, you don't know him. That's just an insignificant person. Xin Haoyue felt that there was something more to this on the surface. Once again, she glanced at the man who stood 4 or 5 steps away from her. Is it coincidence, or does it seem like after her overhearing her conversation with her brother, the man resumed his earlier demeanor of business as usual? Was he someone she was supposed to know? Sure enough, after walking ahead a couple of steps with Xin Chuncheng, she heard her brother triumphantly say, Good, I finally got to a good slap on that Chen Xinan today. Why would anyone from our Xin family get along with him? He's hateful, he doesn't deserve to enter our sights. Rather than pay attention to all his words, a single key word caught Xin Haoyue's attention. Surnamed Chen? Does that person happen to be Chen Xinan? Based on his temperament, her guess can't be wrong. Xin Haoyue secretly frowned. It seems like the first day of coming to the school won't go smoothly. Meanwhile, Chen Xinan entered the dean's office and saw a white-haired elder greet him with a smile. Anan, have you met with the Xin family earlier? They left just now. After that, he pointed to the door's direction. I don't know them well. Chen Xinan wasn't surprised at all. The dean failed to realize that this young man's flat tone was an indirect indication of his displeasure. The elder continued to happily say, I heard that the young daughter of the Xin family had deliberately transferred over to the art department to chase after you. But now, she has once again changed her major to learn broadcasting and hosting. I recall that both majors are east and west of your department? That has nothing to do with me. Uncle Zhao, I came here today to talk to you about the project. If you want to continue talking about unimportant things, then I won't be staying. I'm simply talking about your family life. Why be so serious about it? All right, whatever you say. Just when this uncle thought the topic was over, Chen Xinan specifically explained, she's not part of my family and isn't going to be. Uncle Zhao shouldn't bring up this topic later. President Zhao's face blackened. Does this teenager have to take it so seriously? The news that Xin Haoyue changed her major once again immediately spread like wildfire throughout the Department of Fine Arts. After all, back then, she had stirred up the entire college when she officially announced her pursuit towards Chen Xinan. Xin Haoyue packed up her things to transfer to her new dormitory. During this time, she became deeply aware that one reason why the villainess died was due to her failure to communicate with those around her. At least while Xin Haoyue packed her bags, not one of her 3 roommates went up to talk to her or lend her a hand. Seeing their attitude towards the villainess, she was simply left speechless. Xin Haoyue closed her suitcase, stood up, and noticed the 3 roommates still standing in place while staring quietly at her. Upon making eye contact, they quickly looked away, pretending to stare off elsewhere or busying themselves with other things. After some thought, Xin Haoyue spoke. I want to move to the student dormitory at the West Wing. If there is a chance, then I'll. Halfway through her sentence, she wanted to say that she'll make time to visit them or hang out. But then it might be inappropriate to promise such a thing if she likely won't contact them in the future. Indeed, she never imagined that the villainess and her roommates would have such a stiff relationship. Thus, she could only leave with these parting words. Thank you, goodbye. After Xin Haoyue rolled her suitcase out of the dormitory door, she heard a clear voice behind her say, What just happened? Did Xin Haoyue actually apologize earlier? Yeah, why do I feel as if she's broken her head and her whole temperament has changed? Haha, if her accident changed her character completely, then she should be grateful to Sister Shishi. If it weren't for them encircling her, she wouldn't have fallen so badly. Haha, if her accident changed her character completely, then she should be grateful to Sister Shishi. If it weren't for them encircling her, she wouldn't have fallen so badly. At this time, Xin Haoyue had not yet left and was currently standing outside the room's entrance. Upon overhearing their conversation, she raised an eyebrow and pondered, Shishi. Could it be that someone deliberately pushed the villainess down the stairs before she transmigrated over to this world? Haha, when she read this novel back then, nothing like this was mentioned at all. Aside from trying to avoid Chen Xinan, why does it seem like plenty of other troubles are waiting for her? But it's better to take one's time. It will never be too late to get back at her enemies, since right now, Xin Haoyue had better things to do. In her previous life, she had always dreamed of becoming a TV host after her graduation. Why study teaching and education when she now had the opportunity to start all over again? In addition to her rare advantages this life, Xin Haoyue thought, no matter what, since I'm given a second chance at life, I should make my dreams come true this time. That way, I'll feel joy and satisfaction in my heart. After moving into her new dormitory, Xin Haoyue introduced herself to her new roommates. The beautiful girl with short yellow hair didn't look at her at all, while the other 2 roommates stared closely at her without a word. Hearing no response, Xin Haoyue ended her introductions there. Anyways, she did what she could do, even if other couldn't accept her. This was a consequence left behind by the villainess, and had little to do with herself. So Xin Haoyue resumed her routine of studying all day long. Class, another class, then the library. Fortunately, the subjects studied during her sophomore year of class weren't too profound in regards to the profession. It wasn't difficult to digest the topics to learn them, considering her learning ability. But the numerous people who knew of Xin Haoyue were gradually amazed. Why did this sister, who used to hate studying all day while chasing after Chen Xinan, suddenly change her temperament? Xin Haoyue was more or less aware that people were scheming things behind her back, but she didn't care. They weren't people she knew anyways. That day, when she was on her way back to her dorm after borrowing a book from the library, a college billboard caught her eye. To her horror, she discovered her name up on the announcement. How did her name appear on the list of finalists for the college song and dance competition? Xin Haoyue preferred to believe that her eyes were playing tricks on her after being worn out from reading too many books. However, when she approached the board to confirm, she couldn't help but think, oh no, this piece of news came too fast. Ah! That student number, whose else can it be but mine? Xin Haoyue's face lost all of its life. She didn't know how to dance at all, meaning, she's done for. Upon noticing Xin Haoyue stop on her tracks, Mao Shiyue suddenly turned vigilant. He immediately began to consider whether it was better to look ahead as if he didn't notice her, or if he should take out something to cover his face. After all, he was still horrified by her fierce appearance back then, when she chased him down 6 times a day to get Chen Xinan's number. But unexpectedly, the girl glanced at the announcement posted on the billboard with a frown, then turned back with a heavy heart. Mao Xiuan was shocked. Yes, he was thinking about escaping at first, but what stunned him on the spot was how the girl walked past him without even a glance. Her footsteps were light and steady, while her brow didn't even wrinkle into a scowl. It's as if the both of them had become complete strangers to each other. Although they were indeed unfamiliar, Mao Xiuan immediately thought of another question. Did this woman dare to change her routine to grab attention? Dream on. Chen Xinan won't be fooled, even if she did such a wise move. His way back to his dormitory, Mao Xiuan felt more and more indignant. Upon entering his room, he suddenly found Chen Xinan, that culprit, who rarely stayed in the dorms. Finally, he opened his mouth and said, "You were right to turn down Xin Haoyue." Chen Xinan, who was in search of something, suddenly stopped, half bent over, then looked up at him faintly. Mao Xiuan didn't have to wait for him to reply. He was already satisfied with Chen Xinan's expression. That's right, why should he be interested about that girl? In fact, this was simply Mao Xiuan's self-righteous thoughts. Chen Xinan's first reaction when hearing the surname Xin was trying to recall which person this roommate was talking about, up until he heard the full name, Xin Haoyue. That Xin Haoyue's schemes are very clever. First of all, she tried to chase me and block my path every day, just so she can ask for your specific cell number and address. She would talk to me and smile, then try to flatter me as if I'm her savior. But after you showed that you weren't interested in her, she simply walked past me like I was air. Chen Xinan retracted his gaze and continued to search for a document. What about her? I'm not interested at all. But Mao Xiuan was curious. He leaned over the corner of the table and asked, Do you think Xin Haoyue wants to go after me this time? After hearing this assumption, another roommate poured a glass of water on his shorts while scolding. Mao, aren't you jumping to conclusions? If Xin Haoyue were to chase again after someone, that someone would still be Chen Xinan. So even if she was rejected by him, in conclusion, there's still no place for you at all. Tian, Mao, derogatory nickname for Mao Xiuan, I can't figure out the meaning. Go. Get out of here. Mao Xiuan snapped back. What upsets him most is when someone calls him Da Mao. What was so wrong with having Mao as his surname? The more Mao Xiuan thought of it, the more he couldn't understand. When she left, I looked at the billboard she was staring at, and discovered she was staring at the Beat contestant list for the college's song and dance competition. Did she join because she found out that you would be one of the judges that day? Upon hearing this, Chen Xinan straightened up and considered it. If Mao Xiuan hadn't mentioned this matter, he would have completely forgotten his promise to Ji Yin that he would be one of the judges. However, when he thought of Xin Haoyue, Chen Xinan suddenly recalled a memory 2 weeks ago, in front of the dean's office, when the girl said that she didn't recognize him at all. Was that true, or was she simply acting, or was this simply her scheme of playing hard to get? Just as he was about to think further in this direction, Chen Xinan decisively cut off this train of thought. Why go through the trouble of thinking of this unimportant person? On one corner, Mao Xiuan continued to gossip. I heard that Xin Haoyue changed her major to broadcast and hosting, which is really far from our department. And since the beginning of this month, she no longer squats in front of our dormitory to bring you breakfast and midnight snacks. If these are signs that she has abandoned you, then you can also assume that. Chen Xinan looked at him and slowly said, Is your Chinese at an elementary school level? What? Chen Xinan gave him that look that seems to say, It's a waste of my energy to explain it to you, idiot. Mao Xiuan asked in confusion, Do you have something you wanted to say? The other roommate could no longer stand seeing this, so he explained, You fool. He says your language skills are poor because you're misusing the word abandoned. Who is Anan to be abandoned, or is it your turn to be abandoned? Reminder, Anan is Chen Xinan's nickname. Based on this roommate's perspective, even if Shen Wenyang left him in the past, the two of them never had a definite relationship. One can only say that Shen Wenyang was loved too deeply by Chen Xinan that she had to leave to a faraway country. But how can a man like Chen Xinan be someone abandoned by a woman? As long as he used his inherited handsome looks to stand out, just a finger's movement was needed to attract bees and butterflies. Naturally, someone would end up sticking to him like glue, chasing him everywhere. Chen Xinan was too lazy to deal with these two bored roommates. After finding the documents he was searching for, he turned around and asked, After a while, the subsidiary company will be very busy. Before that, what do you think about going to dinner together? Chen Xinan had his own apartment aside from this dorm, so he seldom comes back here for the past year unless something happens at school. Mao Xiuan also knows that when Chen Xinan gets busy, his whereabouts become elusive, appearing at one moment then disappearing the next. So as soon as he invited them to eat, Mao Xiuan immediately waved his hand and said, Let's go. We'll eat at the most expensive restaurant in the neighborhood. When Xin Haoyue returned to her dormitory, there was only one person present. Zhong Qin applied a face mask after coming out of the bath. After being here for the past month and a half, most of her roommates still held distant attitudes, but since they've been together for some time now, they would chat from time to time. In her opinion, it was quite harmonious. Within this room, the most gentle and easygoing person was Zhong Qin, so it was easier to talk to her in private. Upon seeing Xin Haoyue's sad face when entering, Zhong Qin couldn't help but ask, What's wrong? Xin Haoyue looked at her roommate who wore a face mask and asked, "Is it possible to waiver my participation in the college song and dance competition?" It should be common for contestants to pull out halfway through a competition. Zhongqin sat up in surprise. You won't be participating? Since another person from the dorm, Sun Miao, joined the competition, many students paid close attention to the list of contestants. Xin Haoyue nodded. I really don't want to participate. Zhongqin asked in curiosity, didn't you intentionally join the competition to become famous and grab Chen Xinan's attention? When the auditions were held, you even vowed to win the championship. Heh, is that what happened? Xin Haoyue recalled that in the novel, as soon as the female protagonist left abroad, the next 2 years of the plot were focused mainly on the male lead and the villainess. And what was written were the villainous earth-shaking pursuits after the male lead. In other words, the author is constantly tearing down the villainous IQ while speeding up her impending death. Xin Haoyue subconsciously believed that she could avoid a lot of things by claiming amnesia, but she never expected that there was still so much to clean after. Zhongqin nodded very seriously and affirmed, You really said that. Xin Haoyue warily put her hand over her forehead. She recalled that when the second part of the competition was held, Chen Xinan was also among the judges. That time, the villainess performed a dance while wearing sexy, revealing clothes, and afterwards confessed to the male protagonist on the microphone. What did she say that time? Anyways, what she recalled was that Chen Xinan's face darkened on the spot, not daring to even spare a glance on the villainess. He treated it as if she were a monkey playing cheap tricks. Xin Haoyue thought to herself, before the female protagonist returns, I'll just avoid meeting with Chen Xinan. Anyways, by the time the female lead comes back, Chen Xinan will be devoted to his princess while I'll just graduate peacefully. No one will recall any embarrassing moments related to me. So she feigned a helpless expression and replied to Zhongqin. Actually, I've lost all of my memories ever since falling down the stairs last time. What? Zhongqin was stunned. You've lost your memory? Just when Xin Haoyue nodded, the dormitory door opened and Sun Miao walked in, wearing an open-shouldered dress, while exposing her brilliantly white legs. Upon seeing the pair in the room, she didn't mention overhearing their conversation, and instead said, I'm in a good mood today, so I'll treat you. Let's go out and have a good time together. Xin Haoyue actually wanted to refuse this roommate's invitation. During her first day at her new dorm, Sun Miao's disdainful gaze left a bad impression on her, which is why she seldom spoke to this roommate. What's more, Xin Haoyue wouldn't speak ill of this girl openly, especially since Sun Miao is the one offering to treat them. It's very likely that she'll be coming back again and again to invite them. So troublesome. But she couldn't just refuse. The 3 young ladies packed up and left their dorms. On their way, Zhongqin continued to ask, Do you really want to quit the competition? Xin Haoyue nodded. She won't go. Definitely not. Seeing how firm she was in her decision, Zhongqin lamented, What a pity. You dance so well. Xin Haoyue felt a tinge of guilt. That's not her. She can't dance at all. When Sun Miao learned that she was going to withdraw from the competition out of her own initiative, she pretended to be surprised as she said, Haoyue, you're going to withdraw? Yeah. Oh, what a pity. Sun Miao added, Are you afraid of embarrassing yourself in front of Chen Xinan? After all, you were rejected so badly after you've chased him for so long. Are you using amnesia as an excuse, as a reason to step down this time? For some reason, Xin Haoyue felt that Sun Miao's last words were spoken quite harshly. As soon as she turned to ask her what she meant by that, Xin Haoyue immediately noticed a young man at 3 o'clock from her direction, with his head bowed down slightly. Who could it be other than Chen Xinan? Xin Haoyue's eyes stopped for a moment on Sun Miao, who was staring at Chen Xinan, and then back on that devil again for another second. Finally, she reacted. I'm out of here. Shh. Is it too late for me to leave now? Xin Haoyue's scalp went numb. She really didn't want to see Chen Xinan now of all times. Although he had all the virtues that an excellent male protagonist would have in a romance novel, Chen Xinan had one of the most undesirable faults. All his good qualities were only in favor of the female protagonist. No matter how rich, good-looking, capable, or attractive and dedicated he was, just that one fault of his can become a fatal wound. She will only get hurt if she falls in love with him, so she mustn't fall for him at all costs. Moreover, she knew of Chen Xinan's ruthlessness. When the villainess knelt on the ground and cried for mercy, asking him to let her family go, he arrogantly stared back at her without a word. Xin Haoyue valued life much more than money. Now that the Xin family was on the right track, she had no desire to head towards the villainess's tragic ending, all because of a love that would never be real. She didn't want the surname Chen at all. As she pondered, she couldn't help but look meaningfully at Sun Miao. There were so many characters who ended up in accidents for liking the male protagonist. Since the villainess in the novel never switched to a broadcast and hosting major, naturally, Sun Miao was never mentioned. But who would have guessed she'd appear at this time? Trying to vie for people's attention. Xin Haoyue inwardly rolled her eyes. Hey, can't we just have a good time hanging out? Upon noticing Xin Haoyue's complicated expression, Sun Miao smiled brightly and said, Xin Haoyue, what a coincidence. Chen Xinan is also there. Don't you want to go and talk to him? Xin Haoyue raised an eyebrow and quietly stared back at her. Instead of rushing to answer, she asked the waiter who happened to come to their side, "May I know if there's a vacancy upstairs?" The waiter answered, "I'm sorry, but it's full upstairs. Would the three of you like to come this way instead?" Xin Haoyue found that the direction he pointed to was just behind where Chen Xinan and his group were seated. She remained on the spot, frowning. Sun Miao had already stepped forward and walked past, her waist and legs swaying seductively. Xin Haoyue knew this woman wouldn't stop. While she was dragged to the table by Zhong Qin, she bitterly scolded in her heart, "Surname Sun, if you invite me to eat out again, I'd rather write my name Xin Haoyue upside down." Mao Xiwan, who was talking to a roommate, subconsciously glanced up at Chen Xinan after hearing the female voices behind him discuss. Just then, the name Chen Xinan was clearly heard. Mao Xiwan wanted to see if Chen Xinan's expression dimmed or showed anything unusual, but the man was so calm that he didn't even stop to pick up his chopsticks. Mao Xiwan sighed in his heart. This guy's on a totally different level than the rest. While in thought, a soft voice resounded. "Student, are you eating here too? What a coincidence." Chen Xinan didn't reply at all. Sun Miao felt a little embarrassed. She seldom summoned up the courage to talk to Chen Xinan, which is why she borrowed Xin Haoyue's presence. This man's attitude towards Xin Haoyue was obvious to everyone here. Her plan was that, even if Chen Xinan ignores her, Xin Haoyue definitely wouldn't miss the opportunity to get his attention. As long as this scene continues, Sun Miao won't appear so bad when standing next to someone like Xin Haoyue. But after standing here for several seconds, Xin Haoyue still remained unresponsive. Sun Miao began to lose her composure, so she hurriedly looked towards Xin Haoyue. Mao Xiwan and his roommates were in a good mood while waiting to see this drama develop. They also noticed where Sun Miao was looking and found that Xin Haoyue, who wore a light beige dress, particularly stood out among the two other girls who were approaching. The color of her plain dress complemented her neck and her arms, while her hair, which had been dyed black some time ago, was simply tied up in a ponytail, making her appear more refreshing and comfortable. She had no makeup on her face, but she appeared more beautiful than before when she used to apply heavy makeup. Especially those big eyes filled with spirit, and those long black lashes that fluttered. When Mao Xiwan spotted her last time, he was so anxious to hide that he didn't pay attention to her appearance. After not seeing her for a month, he only realized now that she seemed to have changed as a person. After 2 more glances, he immediately turned to Chen Xinan, who, to his disappointment, simply acted like an outsider who had nothing to do with any of this. Mao Xiwan really felt like beating this guy up. Noticing the gawking stares from the 2 other boys who shared Chen Xinan's table, Xin Haoyue examined them openly as well, trying to figure out who they were. After pondering about it for a while, Xin Haoyue still couldn't recall their names or background. Well, since these were guys who hung out with Chen Xinan, it's better to avoid them. When Zhong Qin saw the Sun Miao had no intentions to withdraw, she kindly went up beside her and asked, "Are we sitting over there?" Sun Miao replied, "Yes, sister, I'll go first." Chen Xinan didn't even raise his eyelids. Instead, Mao Xiwan politely said, "Go ahead." Sun Miao's face blushed with unspeakable embarrassment. Xin Haoyue unintentionally lifted the corners of her lips and laughed silently to herself. "Haha, serves you right." Chen Xinan was someone she knew best. He won't look upon any woman except the female protagonist, not to mention those young girls at school who would spend all day in shopping malls, strong women who flaunted their fashion, or those wealthy and gentle sisters. Not one of them can afford this man. Chen Xinan can be described as someone who valued cleanliness. He hates it when girls pester him, touch his belongings, or have physical contact with him. Of course, the female protagonist is naturally excluded from this list. Knowing that Sun Miao was trying to get a response from Chen Xinan's attractive eyes, Xin Haoyue inwardly rolled her eyes. Hoping for that is simply an idiot's dream. Seeing someone else take the villainous route really is enjoyable, ah? Xin Haoyue was in a good mood watching all of this from the sidelines. As she passed the protagonist's dinner table, she unconsciously quickened her pace, looking forward to leaving them. But contrary to her wishes, there are just some people who won't let her off the hook. In this case, it was a side character who didn't like being looked down on. When Mao Xiwan saw that the other party was about to leave, he deliberately shouted to Xin Haoyue, "Sister Xin, why are you going so fast? Aren't you going to say hello to your savior?" "Sister Xin?" Xin Haoyue turned around and doubtfully stared at the boy who just spoke. Although he looked fit and had a handsome face, somehow, the smile on his face seemed a little unkind. After at him several times, the boy's identity still didn't come to mind, so she pretended to ask innocently, "Were you calling for me? Who else has the surname Xin here except you?" Xin Haoyue secretly gritted her teeth. "Who wants to talk with you?" "Oh." After a faint reply, she was about to turn away. Mao Xiwan stopped her again. "Your male god is here, but you're not even going to greet him?" Subconsciously, Xin Haoyue felt like looking back at the male protagonist, but reason prevented her from doing so. Although she was only 3 steps away from Chen Xinan, she could still feel the fierce aura that emanated from him. Xin Haoyue tried to smile in a relaxed manner and said, "Sorry, classmate, but I don't know who you are." "You don't know me?" Mao Xiuan was surprised. Xin Haoyue nodded calmly. He asked in disbelief, "What game are you playing now?" "Sorry, I really don't know you." "What about him?" Mao Xiuan pointed to Chen Xinan, who had been quiet all this time while staring at her strangely. Xin Haoyue glanced at Chen Xinan, then immediately looked away as she replied, "No, I don't recognize him." Before the other party could reply, she continued to say, "Excuse me, classmate, but we're going to order dinner now." Afterwards, she dragged Zhongqin and hurriedly walked away, while completely ignoring Zhongqin. Just 2 steps later, she felt a chilly gaze piercing at her direction, causing her to look back subconsciously. Just then, she caught Chen Xinan's gaze. Those handsome eyes narrowed as the man stared at her indifferently. Caught off guard, Xin Haoyue was stunned as she saw her figure reflected in those deep, dark eyes. What the hell? It's a foul to have such beautiful eyes. As her pace slowed down, she noticed that his lips curved slightly upwards with a hint of ridicule. She immediately retracted her gaze and turned away. Damn it. Shit. I've been cheated that Chen Xinan did it on purpose. It was as if he was making fun of her for having bad acting skills than perchance. That day, she wasn't lying at all that day when she told Xin Chancheng that she didn't recognize the passerby. Who would have guessed that the passerby was Chen Xinan himself? Fortunately, no one seemed to notice the momentary eye contact they just had. Xin Haoyue felt slightly relieved. Zhongqin took her arm and asked again, "Haoyue, did you really lose your memory after hurting your head last time?" She nodded and replied, "Well, I don't recall anything before that event." Zhongqin looked at her sadly before secretly glancing at that expressionless Chen Xinan. She sighed. What a pity. Overhearing their conversation, Sun Miao walked past them and whispered disdainfully, "Only ghosts will believe that." Mao Xiuan was also surprised. He leaned towards Chen Xinan and asked, "Has Xin Haoyue really lost her memory? If she has, then that would explain her weird behavior today." Chen Xinan snorted with disdain and was too lazy to answer his roommate's question. He didn't believe that she had lost her memories at all. That look of hers was clearly a dodging one, but he wasn't interested in it at all. Amnesia as an excuse was just right. It would save him the trouble of entangling with her. Mao Xiuan was upset. So she doesn't love you anymore now that she's lost her memory? That girl changes easily. Looks like we won't be having any more free breakfasts or lunches in the future. Oh yeah, that soup. The more I think about it, the worse I feel. Chen Xinan slowly replied, "If you like her, then man up and chase her." Mao Xiuan repeatedly waved his hand and replied, "No, never mind, forget it. Who in town doesn't know how troublesome the eldest daughter of the Xin family is? It's difficult to talk to her, even if you talk with reason." Everyone around the table ate heartily except for Chen Xinan. Of course, they were deeply curious about the relationship between Xin Haoyue and Chen Xinan, and why Sun Miao seemed to hate Xin Haoyue. From time to time, Xin Haoyue would glance fiercely at Chen Xinan's back in irritation as she ate one bite after another. Since she really wanted to throw him down, perhaps she should go ahead and do it. Xin Haoyue sighed. After some thought, she concluded that Chen Xinan was truly a source of disaster, since this whole time, everyone's only been talking about this femme fatale. It wasn't easy to pass through Chen Xinan's group to reach the cashier counter. Once she got the chance, Sun Miao immediately stood up and said, "I'm going to pay first." Meanwhile, Xin Haoyue, who had just returned from the restroom, paused as she wiped her hands dry. The corner of her mouth twitched. "Have I made a mistake? I'm sure I just paid the bill before I went to the restroom." Just when Xin Haoyue was about to tell Sun Miao this unfortunate news, she froze on the spot. If she stopped Sun Miao, who was approaching Chen Xinan's group, wouldn't this cause this girl's grudge towards her to swell up? Xin Haoyue stood on the spot as she watched Sun Miao approach the cashier counter. On the way, the girl stopped by Chen Xinan's table and with a shy blush asked him if he had paid his bill yet. However, the young man didn't reply. When Sun Miao finally got to the cashier, she found out that their bill was already paid. The girl turned around and stared at Xin Haoyue in surprise. Of course, Xin Haoyue didn't fail to notice the spark of fire in the girl's eyes. Yeah, it looks like my kind deed turned into something bad. Xin Haoyue hurried back to her seat, then bent over to check her phone. When Mao Xiuan overheard that the other group's bill was already paid, he raised his head to peek at Xin Haoyue. Then, he heard Sun Miao explain weakly. Haha. That's just the kind of person Haoyue is. Someone who likes to brag about her wealthy family. Before coming here, I definitely said that I was the one treating this time. As if none of this had anything to do with him, Chen Xinan glanced up at Sun Miao, his eyes containing unhidden displeasure. Sun Miao realized that she would annoy the young man if she lingered, so she hurriedly excused herself and returned to her seat. However, from that time onwards, she didn't glance once at Xin Haoyue or talk to her. Xin Haoyue shrugged. She didn't care anyway. As Mao Xiuan walked out of the dining room, he couldn't help but ask, "Is it me, or has Xin Haoyue changed a lot?" His roommate agreed. "I think so too." Mao Xiuan nodded. "I can feel she's changed. She's less annoying now, though." His roommate commented, "Actually, even before, I didn't think she was hateful at all. Although she was very straightforward when chasing after a guy, I like a girl who's as frank as her. When it comes to people, it's better to be with someone frank rather than with a person who has a hidden agenda. Unlike that roommate of hers, who obviously wanted to lay a trap for others when she was actually just acting like an innocent white lotus. Mao Xiuan, who shared the same opinion, was about to reply when Chen Xinan suddenly interrupted. Are you all so bored that you have to gossip behind someone's back? Although it was a question, it put an end to Mao Xiuan's and the group's discussion. Right, they all knew that Chen Xinan hated it most when they talked about Xin Haoyue. The person who had crazily chased after him from childhood till now, and the girl who brought him endless trouble and complications, was none other than Xin Haoyue. Xin Haoyue didn't bother mind her encounter with Chen Xinan that day, since right after returning, her first priority was to quickly find the person in charge of the dancing and singing competition. She needed to forfeit as soon as possible. Apparently, the student council was in charge of holding this contest. President Ji Yi was a third-year university student who coincidentally studied in the same field as Chen Xinan. Upon hearing her desire to forfeit, President Ji Yi's face wrinkled in confusion. Sister Xin, everything's been going well up to now. Why do you want to forfeit? Xin Haoyue looked back at his perplexed eyes and gave a vague answer. I've been busy these days, so there's no time for me to participate. Ji didn't plan to let her off just yet. I still remember when you boldly stated that you were going to claim first prize. Haha, Xin Haoyue smiled, not wanting to explain any further. Anyways, I don't want to join this contest anymore. I'm here to talk to the one in charge of this competition. Even if you don't agree, I have no choice. Then, just as she was about to walk away, she heard Ji comment. Turns out Sister Shin's isn't the kind of person who keeps her promises. Xin Haoyue kept silent as she thought to herself privately. No matter, it's not like I was the one who promised. When Ji saw no reaction from her, he had to use Chen Xinan's name. Are you afraid that you would embarrass yourself in front of Senior Chen if you encounter him during the competition? It's none of your business. Ji was even more interested in the topic. Isn't it true that you love Senior Chen so much that you would hover between life and death for him? Why would you give up after just 1 year of chasing him? Xin Haoyue couldn't help but roll her eyes as she thought to herself. In more than a year, even a cold stone should have warmed up under the sun. And Chen Xinan's heart is still stone cold, even after a year of pursuit. Nothing's changed. She replied lazily, It's because I've already stopped by the edge of the abyss, and now I've turned around and made my way back to the shore. Didn't you say that I loved him so much that I even hovered between life and death? I've already died once. If I still don't change my mind, wouldn't it be no different from seeking death one more time? Ji was choked by her words. He didn't know how to retort. Although he had many chances to speak to Xin Haoyue, he had never heard that she was a person with a sharp tongue. Ji squinted and observed her for a while before continuing. Even if you change yourself for Senior Chen's sake, he still won't pay attention to you. Senior Sister Shen was such a perfect schoolgirl, but she only received bits of Senior Chen's appreciation. She never even got to earn the official title as his girlfriend. But looking at your sincere face that shows no desire, it shows that you know when to withdraw when facing difficulty. If you happen to win Senior Chen's heart, I'll admire you sincerely. Xin Haoyue's lips twitched in annoyance as she replied, Thanks for the reminder. The heck, it's the first time that we've met, and yet you're acting as if you know my mind. We obviously had no interaction before. Ji Yi appeared several times in the novel, but after the supporting female character left the campus, this man won't have any roles left, right? Xin Haoyue looked down on shameless people like him. She clearly said she wanted to forfeit, and yet this man was so bored that he went after her at the library and at her dorm, just so he could convince her again and again to join the competition. After Xin Haoyue left the library, she headed straight for the cafeteria, while Ji chased after her. Just when she got in line to get her meal, Ji stuck beside her like a minion, trying to brainwash her to join. Just take part in the contest. You'll have a chance to see Senior Chen. You know, I even spent a lot of time to persuade him to be a judge at the competition. That has nothing to do with me. It won't be any fun if you don't join. Upon hearing this, Xin Haoyue gave him a sarcastic smile. You're wasting time persuading me to join just so you can add oil to the flames and catch more attention? In this university, she was infamous for persistently chasing after Chen Xinan. Moreover, Senior Chen will be at the competition, so more people will be coming to watch the fun. And those girls who had crushes on this male god, but were too shy to voice out their feelings, will be using Xin Haoyue to probe Chen Xinan's mind. No matter what, watching the contest will only bring them more benefits than harm. After Xin Haoyue considered this possibility, she knew that Ji Yi didn't simply become the student president for no reason. Ji Yi smiled and said, Anyways, there's nothing for you to lose. I'll at least put in a good word for you in front of Senior Chen. Xin Haoyue let out a quiet chuckle. Thank you, but no need. She thought to herself, You think you can speak such words in front of Chen Xinan? You think too highly of yourself. Afterwards, she no longer paid him any attention. Although Ji Yi still wanted to bother her, he was summoned by a phone call. No longer having that annoying voice by her ears, Xin Haoyue was quite satisfied. Yes, she could finally have her meal in peace. Not far from her, Mao Shiyuan's chopsticks paused in midair as he pensively observed Xin Haoyue from afar. He took out his phone and texted Chen Xinan. I heard that kid Ji Yi has been close to Xin Haoyue lately. Is it true that she shifted her attention to Ji Yi since she knows that it won't work out with you? Several minutes passed, and he still didn't receive any reply. Mao Shiyuan sent another text message. I heard many people say that these two have been hanging out together recently. Is it true? Since Chen Xinan was at a meeting, he wasn't able to see this text. It wasn't until he finished work and left the dinner party that he received a phone call from Ji Yi on his way back. The student council president wanted to confirm the time of the contest for next week. Chen Xinan had already agreed to join as a judge, so he simply answered with a curt yes before asking his assistant to cancel his schedule that night. Since the other party still hadn't hung up, Chen Xinan asked, what else? Ji Yi gave a dry laugh and responded, Senior Chen, how are you and Xin Haoyue doing these days? Chen Xinan's brow twitched slightly. Why ask? Just tell me what it is you want. Ji Yi answered directly. Xin Haoyue said that since you'll be participating that night, she won't join the semifinals, no matter how hard I've tried to persuade her. I really want her to dance, but since she refuses to, there's nothing I can do. It's good that she's happy. She told me that she doesn't want to be involved in anything related to you. Senior Chen, what happened between the two of you? Chen Xinan grinned as he leaned against his seat. He replied indifferently. It's good that she knows herself well. He hung up immediately afterwards, no longer wanting to continue this conversation with Ji Yi. Meanwhile, a classmate who overheard their phone conversation asked in surprise, what's your purpose in telling Senior Chen these things? Ji Yi waved his hand and explained, you don't understand. If Chen Xinan isn't interested in Xin Haoyue, it would be for the better, right? Moreover, if what Xin Haoyue says is true, then I'm helping her indirectly, right? This is the most suitable method to get the two of them to hate each other. Ji Yi pondered the issue more seriously. Senior Chen was like a son of heaven. How can an aloof schoolgirl like Xin Haoyue possibly get her finger in this piece of pie? If Xin Haoyue knew of his thoughts right now, she would have scoffed and said, are all people in this novel crazy? After Chen Xinan hung up, he read over Mao Shiyuan's texts before dragging his number into his blacklist. A week passed quickly. Soon, the night of the semifinals had arrived. Xin Haoyue wasn't planning on going to the venue, even though Zhongqin told her that the semifinals would be as big an event as the Lunar New Year's evening party. Since 2 of the 4 MC queens of the university would be the MCs for this round. Tonight will be their last time working together before they will graduate. Xin Haoyue once heard about the 4 MC queens of the school. However, one was studying abroad, another has joined a TV station ahead of schedule, while the remaining 2 wanted to participate in this competition before graduating. However, Xin Haoyue was really curious. Why did the 2 sisters agree to be MCs for the semifinal round? In theory, it was amazing luck that these well-known MCs were both successfully invited for the final round. Zhongqin looked at her in disbelief and said, either you really don't understand, or you're pretending that you don't understand. Xin Haoyue was confused. Zhongqin explained, naturally because of Chen Xinan. Many people have guessed that this will be the last school activity he'll be attending here, which means this is the last time they'll see him here. Xin Haoyue blinked in surprise. She muttered to herself, how can that be? When the female protagonist returns, he'll return to school and give lectures so he can help her fulfill her dream. What were you saying? Nothing, I was just wondering whether I should go or not. Stop thinking. Just go. It's a rare chance to see those 2 seniors on the same stage. Such a good opportunity, we wouldn't have a second chance to see this again. After being convinced, Xin Haoyue followed Zhongqin to the hall. The contest would start in 10 minutes and the venue was already packed, full of people. Zhongqin had to push and squeeze to get 2 seats in the back. It wasn't even 2 minutes of being seated that Ji Yi suddenly appeared out of nowhere and waved to Xin Haoyue while screaming, see, you're here. Xin Haoyue threw him a quiet glance, indicating that she didn't want to talk to him. Come on, I'll take you to the front seats. While Xin Haoyue still thought of it, Zhongqin jolted up and replied, thank you, President. Haoyue, let's go. The moment Xin Haoyue was seated on the second row, she couldn't help but feel nervous. So it turns out that they moved several rows ahead their previous ones. She wanted to run away. The first 2 rows were actually the places where the teachers and judges were seated. However, Zhongqin was so excited that she pulled her head and said, Haoyue, I've never been treated so well when watching any competition, so it's true that there's a lot of good perks when going with you. Just when Xin Haoyue was about to retort, a phone call interrupted her. The music in the hall was getting so loud that she had to walk out to receive the call. It was her mother, Baining, calling to ask her why she didn't come home that night. Home? Xin Haoyue was perplexed. You come home every Friday night, don't you? Then Baining said in realization, oh, I forgot that you've lost your memory. Heh. Xin Haoyue didn't know what to say. Baining went on to say, then you should come home early tonight. I cooked you some soup. If it cools down by the time you're home, remember to heat it up before eating. After hanging up, Xin Haoyue searched her memories and recalled that the villainess had her own apartment, one that was right next to Chen Xinan's. Previously, the villainess spent plenty of effort and even did the despicable deed of stalking the male protagonist to find out his address, which wasn't far from school. Afterwards, she bribed Chen Xinan's neighbors with a large sum of money so they could leave the apartment. She used this opportunity to move in next door and try win the male god's favor. Sigh, Xin Haoyue wanted to die. It's quite pitiful that the villainess still didn't win his heart even after putting in so much effort. This was the fate of a villainess that would never change. While Xin Haoyue was deep in thought of how to solve the housing issue, she failed to pay attention to the direction she walked in. Right when she turned around, she bumped into a broad chest. A refreshing, tender masculine scent entered her nose. Xin Haoyue still had her cell phone in one hand. Baffled, she stared straight at a shirt that was unbuttoned at the collar, unable to pull her eyes away from that refined, faintly discernible collarbone. Dang! That white shirt looks so tempting. A thought popped up in Xin Haoyue's head. I really want to trace my hands from that chest to those broad shoulders. Is that too perverted? If I act like a hooligan, will there be serious consequences? The two maintained a close but ambiguous position for several seconds, until the other party couldn't stand it any longer. He opened his mouth and spoke coldly. How long do you plan on sticking to me like this? The man finally couldn't help it. He said coldly, How long do you plan on sticking to me like this? Such a cold voice? Xin Haoyue had a bad hunch. She was hesitant at first, but when she finally raised her head to look up at the man's face, there was a loud thump sound and a sharp pain pierced her forehead. Then she heard a clear voice exclaim, Hey! Xin Haoyue was in such pain at their collision. She reached out and rubbed her aching forehead, feeling a little dizzy. The next second, she noticed Chen Xinan's handsome face looking down at her with a dark expression. She pushed him aside in fright and backed away several steps. However, she forgot that behind her was the top of a staircase, the very place where she made her phone call earlier, while leaning against the railings. Now that she had backed away several steps, her right foot suddenly found no floor to step on, and she inevitably lost her balance. Xin Haoyue instinctively reached out and grabbed the last saving straw, which regretfully was the sleeve of Chen Xinan's black suit. As she tightly held on to the sleeve for dear life, Chen Xinan's expression was as cold as ice. Just as Xin Haoyue thought that she was going to fall on her back, the embarrassing event she imagined didn't happen, because Chen Xinan unexpectedly went forward several steps to hold her waist, saving her before she falls further. The frightened Xin Haoyue was now in his arms. She grasped his right arm tightly, while the other hand pulled at his clothes. She breathed heavily in his embrace, and her legs seemed to have lost its strength. Once again, she experienced a near-death experience, and the feeling of helplessness and terror of falling down the stairs was horrifying. Earlier, Chen Xinan was attending a dinner party, but he ended up coming here. Although he had rolled up his sleeves, the more than 30 degrees weather here made him feel hot and irritable. But at this moment, the slight fruity fragrance from the woman in his arms, along with the cold touch of her fingertips, gave him a rare and pleasant sensation. Chen Xinan frowned. He loosened his arms around her slender waist and legs, straightened up and said in a cold voice, Isn't that enough? Huh? Xin Haoyue looked up at him. Chen Xinan stepped back this time, as if trying to avoid something poisonous. His jaw still ached from their collision earlier. But when he glanced down at her after losing patience, he suddenly noticed her pair of moist eyes. Her lashes were long and her eyes teary, and underneath the light, those pair of eyes seemed amazingly bright. It was rare for Chen Xinan to feel surprised. Xin Haoyue blinked while feeling mad that she teared up. If it wasn't for him, she never would have gotten so frightened that she almost fell down the stairs. But what she didn't know was that her unconscious act of blinking made the onlooker feel as if she looked pitiful. Chen Xinan frowned slightly at the idea. Xin Haoyue immediately came to her senses. Knowing that the man hated her, she quickly pulled back her hand that rested on his arm, and without saying a word, left straight towards the auditorium. She wanted to explain, but reason tells her not to try to explain things to him, lest Chen Xinan misunderstand. Chen Xinan, who had been standing in place for a time, finally moved and made his way to the auditorium while thinking to himself. After I said so many things to her, all she replied was a simple, Well then, is it really her new goal to avoid me as if I'm a snake? While thinking of this, Chen Xinan's gaze deepened as he stared at her slim figure in the distance. Xin Haoyue wore a light blue jacket with a matching blue denim skirt tonight. Since she took good care of herself, her figure was curvaceous. As the girl sat down, Chen Xinan noticed her unintentionally glance up at him before immediately turning her head away in disgust. Chen Xinan's appearance in the auditorium had already caused quite a sensation in the crowds. When Ji Yi invited other people to sit at the judges' seats, unfortunately, there was only one remaining seat in the middle. Chen Xinan looked at the seat, then glanced sideways at Ji Yi. Ji smiled and explained, I reserved the seat for Senior Chen. If not, I'm afraid you wouldn't have come. Chen Xinan whispered, "Ah," making it unclear whether he was satisfied or not. After he was seated, Xin Haoyue, who had been playing with her cell phone with her head down, suddenly looked up at Ji Yi with a fierce glare. Ji Yi happily responded with a, "You'll have to thank me" expression on his face. Xin Haoyue gritted her teeth as she thought, sure enough, there's no free lunch in this world. This Ji Yi did it all on purpose. Otherwise, why would he have Chen Xinan sit right in front of her? Even several bored people in the room began to notice the subtle situation. Zhongqin tugged Xin Haoyue's sleeves and whispered in her ear, "Why is Senior Chen's seat right in front of you?" Xin Haoyue was unhappy with her question, but she still controlled her tone as she replied, "How do I know? That bastard definitely set this up." When Zhang noticed her dissatisfied look, she hurriedly said, "But President Ji probably just wants to help you get closer to Senior Chen. He's given you a rare opportunity." Upon hearing their conversation, Chen Xinan, who sat up front, lifted the corner of his lips and smirked. "Humph, who cares?" Chen Xinan had little interest in these competitions. Since the program hasn't started yet, he looked through his mailbox to check the documents sent over by his assistant. Occasionally, however, he would look up when hearing that slightly dissatisfied female voice that resounded clearly from behind him. "Haha, women are very fickle." They would spout all kinds of flattery and admiration while pursuing someone, but once they have a new goal, the former is easily abandoned. Chen Xinan silently labeled her as someone who liked to play with people's feelings. Xin Haoyue automatically blocked out the contents of the audience's whispers behind her, including their worship and love for Chen Xinan, their gossip of her crazy pursuits, and the strange coincidence that both their seats were this close to each other. At the start of the program, Xin Haoyue tried to focus her attention on the two MCs. Their clothes were well chosen. The two of them also seem very generous, and the occasion is handled in a very coherent and responsive manner. Also, they skillfully delivered their lines and properly grasped the emotions with their words. The two sisters also cooperated very well with each other. After watching most of the program, Xin Haoyue felt that she had gained a lot of knowledge. But the person in front of her had to go out and answer his phone from time to time, which made her feel irritated. Every time Chen Xinan stood up, a little disturbance would happen all around them, and the name Chen Xinan would be mentioned by people hundreds of times. After who knows how many times the man had returned to his seat, Xin Haoyue's mood finally flared up. She impulsively complained as he sat down, "Classmate, can you please keep a low profile?" After who knows how many times the man had returned to his seat, Xin Haoyue's mood finally flared up. She impulsively complained as he sat down, "Classmate, can you please keep a low profile?" Xin Haoyue felt as if her brain had malfunctioned, but she was glad that she didn't say it loudly, which means the other guy shouldn't have heard it. Even if he did hear, based on the script, he would surely continue to ignore her. But to her surprise, Chen Xinan turned around and looked at her, with that meaningful, cold glare of his. Xin Haoyue felt herself tremble unconsciously. "I'm finished." Sure enough, Chen Xinan, who seemed to have taken the wrong medicine tonight, retorted back at her lightly and said, "Don't you set an example yourself on keeping a low profile?" WTF. Xin Haoyue's mind was in a frenzy. Why is he talking to me? Does Chen Xinan have the wrong soul in him too? What do I do? What do I do? While her mind was stuck on this issue, Chen Xinan glanced at her lightly, seemingly indifferent to her response. He turned around and stared straight at the show ahead. And Xin Haoyue, who remained seated, silently looked at the male protagonist's back and thought, seriously, even the guy's back looks so tempting. There's definitely something wrong with me. Likewise, all of the gossipers present were losing their minds at that same moment. Chen Xinan had walked in together with Xin Haoyue earlier, and even their seats were right in front of the other. Not only that, the male god turned around and talked to her. What's going on between the two of them? Was Chen Xinan really seduced by that Xin Haoyue? That's terrible. This time, neither the audience nor contestants were feeling calm. It wasn't easy to wait until the end of the program. After the MCs announced the results of the competition, the event wrapped up without a hitch, and Chen Xinan stood up and shook hands with several of the school leaders. Xin Haoyue didn't get up to see him, and of course, the main reason was to avoid suspicion. However, Xin Haoyue clearly heard the principal respectfully call him CEO Chen. Upon hearing such a respectful address, she couldn't help but think, do they really have to be so businesslike? Chen Xinan soon left the auditorium. Naturally, Zhongqin didn't want to linger here any longer, so she planned to go back to the dormitory. Meanwhile, Xin Haoyue recalled that her mother, Bai Ning, left soup back at her apartment. She still had to go back, so she said her goodbyes to Zhongqin before leaving. Zhongqin looked at her and said teasingly, "Haoyue, we've known each other for so long and we've also shared the same dorm for a while now. Then tell me, how far have you and Mr. Shen progressed?" Huh? Xin Haoyue didn't understand. Zhongqin smiled and explained, "Don't think that we have no clue. Just now I saw Senior Chen turn around and talk to you deliberately." Xin Haoyue calmed down. He's just what? Before thinking more about what to reply, Xin Haoyue simply threw a sentence. He just forgot to take the right medicine today. After catching Zhongqin off guard, Xin Haoyue took this opportunity to slip away. Students who love gossip are really hard to deal with. As the crowd of students went to the front of the school gate, Xin Haoyue also followed along while feeling confused. Where was her apartment located again? As she stood by the school gate, she carefully tried to recall where the male protagonist resided, but with someone as rich as him, there were several places to choose from to live alone. Xin Haoyue didn't have the habit of memorizing a person's exact address. Since she simply glanced at it while reading the novel, nothing came to mind, even as she racked her brains. With no other choice, she sent a message to Xin Chancheng, asking him to send a specific address. Xin Chancheng was speechless. If his sister was this silly, how can he possibly save her in the future? Xin Haoyue took a taxi to go to her so-called apartment. When she arrived at her destination, she looked up at the grand gate of her apartment complex and had a moment's hesitation. Did they have to design it so luxuriously? She stiffly went up the stairs step by step, thoroughly feeling like a country bumpkin ever since arriving in this world. Only then did she realize that she needed more time to adapt to the fact that she was now a local wealthy heiress. For half an hour, Xin Haoyue strolled around the compound while enjoying the magnificent view. A serious question suddenly came to mind. She had asked Xin Chancheng what the address for her apartment was, but she forgot to inquire as well about her specific apartment unit and room number. Just as she took out her cell phone to trouble her brother once more, a slender and handsome figure caught her attention. The sleeves of the young man's long-sleeved shirt was pulled up and his suit coat was folded up and slung on his arms. Haha, it's Chen Xinan once again. Xin Haoyue was about to turn around and hide, but just when she turned, another question came to mind. If she secretly followed after the male protagonist, wouldn't she be able to find her apartment? She clearly recalled that Xin Haoyue's apartment was next door to Chen Xinan's. Following him would save her time trying to look around, because she had discovered that this apartment complex was quite large. After some consideration, she stealthily followed after Chen Xinan. Although she tried to make her footsteps very light and did her best not to get close to him, she was suddenly caught while only being less than 200 meters away from him. Chen Xinan's gaze was cold and fierce, the warning message in his eyes obvious. Xin Haoyue was frightened by the terrible look in his eyes. She unconsciously shook off the feeling and comforted herself, thinking, "What are you afraid of? It's not like I wronged him." With that in mind, she dared to reply, "What are you looking at?" "Oh." Chen Xinan sounded as if he heard a ridiculous joke. "Don't you think you should ask yourself that question?" It's that tone again. It was that exact same tone he used in the auditorium, one filled with undisguised sarcasm. Xin Haoyue looked straight at him and said in a small voice, "I wasn't looking at you." He laughed at her words. Xin Haoyue muttered under her breath, "Crazy." She went forward 2 steps, but then recalling that she had no idea where her apartment was, she stopped in her tracks once again. Noticing her hesitation, Chen Xinan folded his arms across his chest and glanced at her lazily. His eyes filled with pride and ridicule. Xin Haoyue glared at him, then decisively walked past him. She took out her cell phone and called Xin Chancheng. "Brother, what apartment number do I live in?" When Chen Xinan heard her voice gradually fading into the distance, he unconsciously raised a brow. She doesn't even know where she lives, so does that mean she really lost her memory? He considered this even more when he saw how Xin Haoyue kept trying to unlock her apartment door with several different keys. Unexpectedly, he felt like laughing. Rather than amnesia, hasn't this girl gone stupid? Chen Xinan picked up an important phone call halfway through, so he stopped in place and wasted a lot of time answering the call. Afterwards, he took the elevator and made his way back to his apartment. When he got there, he saw that tiny figure half bent over while foolishly trying to open the door with one key after the other. The girl cursed under her breath. How can there be so many keys? Ugh, this isn't the one either. Chen Xinan stood not too far behind, listening to the crisp sound of keys colliding. After a while, the door still showed no sign of opening. Suddenly, he couldn't stand witnessing her lack of IQ. After Xin Haoyue tried several keys without success, she muttered in frustration. "No way, I obviously collected all of Xin Haoyue's keys. How come none of these are right? Was there something I missed?" She was unable to find any solutions. As soon as she turned around, she saw Chen Xinan quietly standing behind her for who knows how long. She thought that he would have reached his own apartment earlier than she did, since it took her a long time of circling before finding this spot after all. Without glancing at her, he went straight to the front door of his own apartment, took out his key, then unlocked it. When he opened his lock, Xin Haoyue stared straight at the man's hand, waiting for him to pull out his key so that she could see what it looked like. She needed a reference so she can have an idea of the apartment's key design. What's annoying is that Chen Xinan seemed aware of her thoughts. He opened his door and pushed it straight in, then pulled his key out quickly before closing the door. Xin Haoyue glared at that spot with bitter resentment, but half a second later, she recalled that a high-end looking key with a red string tied to it was hidden under her pillow in her dorm. Now that she remembered, she hurriedly traveled back to her dormitory to grab the keys. Sure enough, when she tried this on her apartment door, just a slight turn caused the knob to click. Xin Haoyue excitedly pulled out the key. That annoying guy dares to confuse me. Oof. After muttering to herself, she glanced down at the red string and shook her head. In fact, the villainess was too infatuated with that man. Wrapping the key with a red string and hiding it under her pillow was evidence that she considered the handsome male protagonist as her only sustenance and source of hope. However, the villainess never would have expected that a miserable ending awaited her. Under the dim corridor light, Xin Haoyue finally managed to open the door with her key. She retracted her key and smiled with pride. Just when she was about to enter, she heard her neighbor's door click open, and the sound of a woman's voice echoed. Think again. If you dare play tricks with me, I'll have your old man deal with you. For a moment, Xin Haoyue wondered who the woman was until she heard a familiar man's reply. Every time, you keep trying to threaten me with my old man. Why would I trick you? Now that she knows this was related to Chen Xinan, she wanted to quickly enter into her apartment, but then the woman's voice behind her spoke. Huh? How can your neighbor be such a young girl? Chen Xinan's mother, Wang Yinlin, wore a light gray dress with her skirt reaching to her knees. Even in her middle age, her waist was still slender, and her face, accentuated with makeup, was full of charm. Xin Haoyue observed this new face and soon realized where Chen Xinan got his good genes. His mother was quite attractive. Xin Haoyue's impression of Wang Yinlin was the same as any mother of a rich male protagonist. In whichever novel, she hated this type of lady very much. Even in the original novel for this world, this mother threatened the female protagonist to leave her son while promising any amount of money, even if it's thousands of dollars. However, during that time, the female protagonist's career was flourishing, so she naturally humiliated Wang Yinlin's reputation in a merciless fashion. Wang Yinlin had to retreat in the end. Wang Yinlin was treated like a princess since childhood. Later on, she started her own entertainment company and even won the title of Film Empress numerous times. Who wouldn't treat her like a queen? Aside from the female protagonist who clashed with her, no one else had a chance of going against Wang Yinlin except for her son. That was why she got into trouble when trying to subdue the female protagonist. Anyways, in Xin Haoyue's opinion, there would always be disagreements between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Since ancient times, there didn't have to be a good reason for someone to hate another. Xin Haoyue's thoughts began to wander. When did Wang Yinlin gradually begin to accept the female protagonist? It seems to be that year after her son's marriage, when Sheng Wenyang gave birth to a son. Since then, their friendship gradually began to develop. While in a daze, Xin Haoyue had no idea that Chen Xinan glanced at her after hearing his mother's question. Naturally, he noticed that her door was still half open. When he entered his apartment earlier, he heard her leave the apartment. How could she be back now? Perhaps she left to retrieve her keys before returning. Chen Xinan was surprised that this girl would still trouble herself and run back and forth diligently in the middle of the night. But thinking about it, the fact that she chases him diligently was one thing she was good at doing. Fearing that his mom might get the wrong idea, he unexpectedly spoke up and explained, Mom, I don't know her. The implication behind his words was to avoid gossip and prying any further. Wang Yinlin stared at him in disbelief. Just now, he was clearly sneaking a glance at that girl. Don't think that she didn't miss it. Getting this boy's attention was no easy feat. When Wang Yinlin looked at Xin Haoyue once again, the girl nodded timidly in affirmation of Chen Xinan's claim. Afterwards, Xin Haoyue said that she had to go, then smiled at the mom before quickly retreating into her room. Wang Yinlin noticed that the young girl had a clean face without any thick makeup, but was still quite a beauty. She wanted to ask a question or two, but never expected the girl to run away as if she was being chased by frightening beasts. Wang Yinlin was familiar with her son's way of speaking and mannerism since he was a child. She turned to her son and asked, Do you know her? Chen Xinan impatiently replied, I just told you earlier. Wang Yinlin laughed and commented jokingly, It's rare for a girl to not be swayed by your appearance when she sees you. She didn't seem to put you in her sights at all, does she? How can two people claim to not know each other when the truth is already so obvious? After saying so, she was amused to see that her son's face seemed somewhat gloomy. Humph, instead of faking, why don't you just admit it? After seeing Wang Yinlin off, Chen Xinan stood by his door while thoughtfully looking at his neighbor's closed door. He was considering when to carry out his plan to move out of this apartment. To his surprise, however, before he could make his move, his neighbor already made plans to move out quickly. That weekend, while Chen Xinan had a break, he suddenly heard loud ping-pang-pang noises next door along with loud voices. Although he couldn't hear the specifics of what was said, it was obvious that there were several people next door. Feeling very angry, Chen Xinan changed into his casual clothes and opened the door, his expression dark and cloudy. Xin Haoyue, who wore black jeans, shirt, and a red jacket, was shaking her head while directing a group of large men in work clothes to move her furniture. Upon seeing this, Chen Xinan couldn't help but furrow his brow. Xin Haoyue heard a door behind her open, but just as she was about to turn around in curiosity, something caught her attention and she continued to direct her men. Be careful, careful. Go left again. Okay. Chen Xinan, who was completely ignored, deepened his gaze. Xin Haoyue, what's the meaning of this? Xin Haoyue, what's the meaning of this? Xin Haoyue didn't even think about it before she retorted, I'm moving. Nevertheless, Chen Xinan's expression remained calm and collected. He didn't respond to her. However, Xin Haoyue was smart enough to sense his terrible mood. The man's entire body seemed to be emitting an aura as if to say, I'm not in a good mood, so it's best if you don't provoke me. As a result, Xin Haoyue's clear dark eyes swept at her surroundings before she said apologetically, I'm sorry for waking you up. We will be done moving everything out in 20 minutes, so once we're finished, we will leave immediately. Chen Xinan only felt an unhappy mood well up in his heart. Did he look stupid to her? How can he not see that she was moving? He only wanted to ask why it seemed as if she couldn't wait to move far away from him. Back when she liked him, she chased after him and stuck to his side like a sticky piece of gum that he couldn't wait to throw away. Now that she didn't want him anymore, she was trying to avoid him much more vehemently than he did to her. At this thought, Chen Xinan grunted at her with disdain and turned around. Xin Haoyue was confused by his reaction. She stood on the spot, trying to figure what he meant by that grunt, but even after thinking about it for a few minutes, she still couldn't tell what it was that made him unhappy. She was obviously fulfilling his wish by moving far away. Since she's being so considerate towards him, why does he still have to act so enigmatic? Why is this guy so hard to understand? Xin Haoyue already knew that even if she didn't move away, Chen Xinan would eventually move away on his own. In the end, it didn't make a difference whether it was him or her who moved out. Moreover, this wasn't a place that she had bought for herself. It would be better if she sold the place and used that money to buy a place she liked. When Xin Haoyue had returned home the other day, she had told Xin Chanchang that she wanted to sell her place. Xin Chanchang naturally knew that she had originally stirred up trouble in order to buy that place and get closer to Chen Xinan. He had tried convincing her before, but Xin Haoyue was persistent on buying that place. Back then, he wasn't in the mood to handle her affairs. Now that she wanted to sell it, Xin Chanchang couldn't agree more with the idea. In less than a week, he was able to find her a buyer. Even the people from the moving company were prepared by him. Xin Haoyue was idle, since everything had already been taken care of by her brother. She had only come over to grab some things and help with the moving, but she never expected that Chen Xinan was such a difficult person to please. In the end, she didn't care about whether he was angry or happy. In high spirits, she happily finished all of her work, lifted her small backpack, and rolled her suitcase towards the train to head back home. Chen Xinan followed his normal routine of exercising in the gym for half an hour. He then took a shower and sat down in preparation to eat breakfast. As he sat down, he strained his ears to listen to the sounds outside, but it was completely quiet. He coolly took a sip of milk. In the end, he couldn't restrain himself and stood up, opening his door. As he glanced at the tightly shut entrance next door, his expression turned dark. After moving out, Xin Haoyue was filled with excitement for a long time. Her spirits were incomparably high. Since it was now early May, she recalled that according to the plot following the competition scene, Chen Xinan would head back directly to his company and work. If they were to cross paths again, it would be during their graduation ceremony this early June. Haha, she would no longer encounter Chen Xinan at school, neither would she ever go where he lived. Xin Haoyue was very certain that their paths would not cross in the future, so she relaxed mentally and single-mindedly focused on studying. However, the saying of, the brother has left the Jianghu, but the Jianghu still has stories of that brother, was on point. 10. Jianghu literally means rivers and lakes, but usually represents the wandering community of martial artists and people of special skills. It's mentioned often in Chinese martial arts movies and other sea novels as well. Although Chen Xinan was no longer physically on campus, the impact of the aftermath was still quite serious. That night, the pair's display of intimacy was seen by everyone, causing the site traffic on the campus forum to increase considerably. There was a post titled, out of the 818 female fans who had chased S School's prince who won in the end, that was very popular. After Zhang Qin had notified her of the post, Xin Haoyue had no desire to check it out. However, her roommate still pushed her to skim through several pages of the post. The first comment included a photo that the dorm leader secretly took, which showed Chen Xinan turning around and speaking to Xin Haoyue. Xin Haoyue thought that it must have been the lighting that had created a false impression. If not, why else would she see a slight touch of tenderness in Chen Xinan's eyes? Of course, she was the only one who assumed that it was the lighting playing tricks on the photo. Thousands of others thought that the look in Chen Xinan's eyes were exceptionally tender as he glanced back at Xin Haoyue. As a result, after the photo was posted, some mourned, some cried, and some directly scolded Xin Haoyue as shameless. Then, the main event broke out. After seeing several comments that scolded Xin Haoyue for being shameless, everyone started joining in, crying out the same thing. They also very considerately dug out her old history of chasing after the male god. In fact, they reviewed all of her old awkward and embarrassing moments. Compiled together, it should be called Xin Haoyue's Growth Record of Shamelessness. After hundreds of pages of scolding, someone finally changed up the tune. Ah, this girl is actually quite praiseworthy and courageous. If there was someone who chased after me like this, I might reciprocate as well. Hence, everyone's focus shifted again. They studied the secret of how to win over the aloof school prince. Xin Haoyue wanted to prostrate before their brainlessness. It truly was impressive. Chen Xinan's fame, coupled with this popular forum, caused the name Xin Haoyue to become recognizable to more and more people. When Xin Haoyue went to the school cafeteria to eat, people around her were no longer focused on their meals. Instead, they purely put their efforts into staring at her. As a result, she no longer visited the cafeteria as often. Of course, there were still some small troublesome matters, but Xin Haoyue sincerely and earnestly warded them away. Xin Haoyue stared at the group of girls blocking her way. Classmates, I'm really not in a relationship with Chen Xinan. You're lying. Who is Chen Xinan? He is the school prince of our college, the male god. Who do you think I am to be able to match up to him? Xin Haoyue enthusiastically exaggerated Chen Xinan's status. Oh, that's true. The person suddenly understood. So you are speaking the truth? I swear to God. But, doesn't that post say? The post was just blindly stating things. Chen Xinan and I have no relationship with each other whatsoever. Xin Haoyue had bitterly tried to persuade them, and they had miraculously believed her. As they walked away, one of the girls even vowed, "Don't worry, I will help you clear up this matter." The kind students immediately replied to the post once she got home. Just now, I asked Xin herself. She swore to God that she and Chen Xinan aren't in a relationship with each other. She doesn't even think about him. Everything is clear and innocent. Everyone, you can rest assured and go wash up and sleep. After the post was sent, quite a few people inquired about the truth of the statement by posting comments underneath the claim. The kind-hearted student earnestly replied to each of the posts. Mao Shiwan excitedly looked at the posts and comments and had even taken a few screenshots of them. He showed the screenshots to Chen Xinan and asked, "Xinan, what did you do to make Miss Xin wholeheartedly deny the relationship between you two? What's more, it seems like she's trying to avoid you as one might with snakes and scorpions." When Chen Xinan finished looking through the forum and its information, he frowned and glanced at the picture. Chen Xinan smiled an ice-cold smile as he just thought of something, then replied. Mao Shiwan, one word. Oh. Mao Shiwan didn't think that Chen Xinan would respond, but he actually responded this time. He was excited as he replied, "Damn, I think I smell adultery in the air." Chen Xinan sneered. His slender fingers quickly typed a sentence on his phone before he sent, "You should ask her how she felt that night when she met my mother." Mao Shiwan was excited to the point that he couldn't even type his words correctly. He immediately replied, "What is this situation? You guys actually got together while hiding it from other people? Quickly tell me, how long has this been going on?" Chen Xinan indifferently replied, "You can ask her." Continuing on, he acted as though he remembered something else. "I'm very curious how the people in the forum will react when they hear that she had seen my mother." Mao Shiwan was stunned. Did he want to publicize their relationship? Crap, he wished he could get closer to Xin Haoyue now, but the way he was going about things right now didn't seem to be his usual style. After all, the way he spoke made it seem like there was a conspiracy behind it all. Even though he didn't fully understand the situation, Mao Shiwan still fulfilled what he thought was Xin Haoyue's wish. Underneath the forum, he added oil to the fire by stating, according to the male party involved, the female party has already met his parents. The involved party had said, and I quote, "You should ask her how she felt that night when she met my mother." The forum was just calming down, but Mao Shiwan's comment had sent them into a frenzy once again. What's with this situation? I know this ID, it's Senior Mao Shiwan. Your mother. Isn't Senior Mao Shiwan living with Senior Chen Xinan? That scared me. This means that the source of the information is definitely reliable. She actually had already seen his parents. It seems like we can't keep school hunk Chen anymore. Woo, woo, woo. The school prince has an owner now. Let's all go wash up and sleep. Is there still room on the school roof? I want a book. I already told you that there would be a good show. You guys just didn't believe me. Xin Haoyue isn't worthy of our male god. I reject this couple. Are you stupid? She's already met his parents, so there's no use even if you reject it. I'm heartbroken. My male god. Xin Haoyue was at the library. She had just finished reading half of her book when she was beckoned back by an urgent message on her phone. She pushed open the door to her dorm and found that all the girls in her class were gathered there. Xin Haoyue was surprised. Are you guys having a party? Haoyue, stop acting dumb. We all know. Xin Haoyue was still unaware, so she asked, "Know what? We know the matter between you and the school prince." What? You've already met the school prince's mother, isn't that right? Xin Haoyue thought about it, but still didn't understand the true meaning behind those words and truthfully replied, "Yeah, I met her." Oh my god, Haoyue, you are amazing. After Xin Haoyue finished speaking, they surrounded her and started their inquisition. What kind of method did you use to capture him? Quickly tell us. Oh right, how far have you guys gone? Have you guys kissed or hugged? Is the school prince considerate? Did it feel good to kiss him? Xin Haoyue was still oblivious to the situation. In order to answer their quick succession of questions, she had to increase her voice by a few decibels. She was still baffled when she asked, "What are you guys talking about?" Zhongqin explained, "Senior Mao said that you and the school hunk are in a relationship." Huh? Xinxue was speechless until she saw what Mao Xiuan had posted. Her expression became gloomy. Is this person ill? Why is he making up rumors? Sun Miao Miao was the first to refute her. Rumor? Are you saying that Senior Mao isn't telling the truth? It was the truth. I saw his parents, but I had only greeted them by nodding my head. Does that even count as meeting his parents? Said Xinxue unhappily. Does that mean that of all the parents I've met, if they have a son whose age is similar to mine, that would mean we're dating? After Xinxue had finished venting, she was still annoyed. I don't need to explain the situation to you guys. I don't have any relationship with Chen Xinan. I'll be hostile with anyone who dares mention Chen Xinan to my face in the future. Did Chen Xinan have illness? She had tried so hard to minimize her presence, hiding and avoiding him, but it seemed that he didn't like to see other people living well. No one had ever seen the polite and amiable Xinxue become angry. The girls glanced at each other. But no one spoke up besides Sun Miao Miao, who mockingly smiled at Xinxue. Xinxue had used the computer's ID to reply to the post. I am Xinxue. I'm here to declare that Chen Xinan and I have no relationship with each other. If anyone tries to start making rumors about us again, I will really capture Chen Xinan for myself. Xinxue was so angry with Chen Xinan for deliberately causing trouble that she couldn't help but think over and over of the harsh punishments he would suffer hundreds of times in her mind. She went through a lot of trouble pretending to act tough to calm down the women's gossiping, but who knew that once men started to gossip, it was even worse. Ji Yi was an honest-to-goodness freak. He had already been bothering her for the past few days about it. When Xinxue walked out of the library, she couldn't help but sigh upon noticing Ji Yi approach from behind her. She looked back at him expressionlessly. Why are you still following me? I don't need to attend any other competitions. Can't I talk to you now that you're not going to competitions? Xinxue chuckled and answered impolitely. You really can't. Ji was flustered at her ruthless remarks. Seeing that his face was fairly ugly, she stared at him and smiled smugly while continuing to speak. I don't want any relationship with your department or the student union. You should be conscientious enough not to put me in a tight spot. I just might lash out unkind words if I can't take it anymore. Xinxue's threat prompted Ji to ask, just like when you lashed out on the forum about winning Chen Xinan for yourself? Well, I hope you would do the same for me. Xinxue was shocked. She posted rumors about winning Chen Xinan over, but it was only to make the girls stop. Under no circumstances would they wish for the one they admired or liked to have his own angel. Even if these girls didn't date the school prince, simply knowing that the male god was single was enough to bring them joy. She knew that they didn't want her and Chen Xinan to be together, since they heard of how shameless she was. With Chen Xinan's strange attitude, she might have really ended up winning him over if she maintained this shamelessness. Xinxue knew that they wouldn't risk it. Therefore, the truth proved that no one would why her and Chen Xinan anymore. She was satisfied. But Ji Yi really misunderstood. Xinxue couldn't help but sigh, responding, if you had half of Chen Xinan's looks and power, maybe I could accept you? Reluctantly. Ji Yi was speechless. Seeing that he stopped talking, Xinxue was very pleased. Good. She could slip off. Who would have thought that Ji Yi in his freakish behavior would grab her wrist? You're rejecting me because Chen Xinan and I are in the same department? Or is it because he was the former president of the student union and I'm the current one? Is that why you don't want relations with anyone that had to do with him? Xinxue couldn't help but knit her eyebrows annoyedly when she saw him grab hold of her slender wrist. Before she crossed over, she had always been single. At most, she had feelings towards one or two guys at school and chatted with them, but she never got together with them. They didn't even hold hands. But now, Ji the freak was having his way with her wrist. Xinxue calmly looked at her wrist and raised her chin. Let go. Xinxue looked at him and said gloomily, you guessed right. I'm not willing to have any relationship with anyone or anything related to Chen Xinan. Even if he left the school, I wouldn't be willing to mention the architecture department or even the student unions. All you did was borrow the light Chen Xinan left behind. You're not being fair to me, Ji replied. We're not related in any way, and I'm not planning to be friends with you. Why should I be fair? Xinxue couldn't help but add, Ji, your department is on the east side while mine is on the west. Stop letting me see you so often, okay? What she really meant was that she didn't want to see him at all. Ji's expression darkened. Xinxue didn't care much about it. There weren't many people in her department who were similar to Chen Xinan. The only problem left was Ji. She couldn't help but feel like she didn't know what he wanted. Instead of staying by her side and wasting brain cells, why not bug off earlier on? That way, she could peacefully do what she wanted to. Xinxue felt extremely accomplished after leaving Ji, to the point where she even hummed a song while going out to look for food. What she wasn't aware of was that besides Ji in the architecture department, Mao Xiuan was also looking for her. He asked many people before finding out that Xinxue was in the library. Upon arriving, he saw Xin Haoyue and Ji having a conversation. When he heard Ji questioning Xin Haoyue, asking if she wasn't willing to have any relations with people related to Chen Xinan, he eagerly took out his phone and recorded them. He even laughed at Chen Xinan's misfortune when Xin Haoyue admitted to it. I wonder if Anan will turn green with anger after seeing this video. Originally, he thought that Xin Haoyue became smarter and learned that there was no sweetness behind forced words. Today, he learned that was not the case. Rather, she was ruthless and heartless. Mao Xiuan thought that Xin Haoyue was much more interesting than before. Because of this, he wanted to get closer to her and find out even more about her. So when Xin Haoyue was waiting for food and suddenly noticed a man sitting by her side, she instinctively raised her head to find none other than Mao Xiuan smiling while he greeted her. Long time no see, Junior Xin. Xin Haoyue didn't react as a thought crossed her mind. Those who smile are not good people. Xin Haoyue looked up in alarm, saying unhappily, I don't know you. She remembered his looks. The person in front of her was the one who sat by Chen Xinan's side whenever she went to eat with Sun Miao Miao. If he ate with Chen Xinan, then she wouldn't interact with him. Mao Xiuan quietly acknowledged Xin Haoyue's lack of enthusiasm. He smiled and asked, Do you really not remember me? With closer observation, he figured Xin Haoyue was probably only pretending not to remember. But Xin Haoyue really didn't know him. You are? Mao Xiuan exclaimed confusedly. He was shocked. Was she going to continue to act? We don't really know each other, so there's no need to sit together. There are plenty of seats over there. Xin Haoyue responded sincerely, while she pointed to her right, unaware of the abundance of thoughts flowing through Mao Xiuan's mind. Mao Xiuan froze while pouring water for himself, and roared. I'm Mao Xiuan. His loud voice practically demanded attention. Mao Xiuan was about to explode from anger. He calmed down and continued. Did you really forget? Heh, replied Xin Haoyue, not knowing what to say. But she knew it was the male lead's best friend. Mao Xiuan? Mao Xiuan. She knew the name. He was pretty close to the male lead. After the male lead opened his own company, Mao Xiuan was the one in charge of management. Plus, before she crossed over, Mao Xiuan was considered a matchmaker between the second female lead and the male lead. Even if Xin Haoyue wasn't unfamiliar with him, it's not like she could pretend to know him very well either. Somewhat apologetically, she replied, Sorry, I really have no memory of you. Pretend. Keep pretending. Mao Xiuan thought in his heart. Did you really lose your memory? Xin Haoyue hurriedly nodded her head and confirmed. Yeah, really. Mao Xiuan couldn't accept her response. I don't believe this. If you really lost your memory, then how come you act differently when you're around Chen Xinan? Xin Haoyue rolled her eyes. Dear, through which one of those eyes did you see me and Chen Xinan getting along in a friendly manner with each other? She thought to herself. Seeing that she didn't respond, Mao Xiuan didn't have to either. The message behind the expression on his face was clear. Now that you've shown me what you really are, how are you going to clean this mess up now? Xin Haoyue knitted her eyebrows. Mao Xiuan struck while the iron was hot. What's the matter? Have you run out of excuses? I don't need an excuse, but you can try. Chen Xinan is a name that you hear every day. How could you not remember his name? Many people seemed scared that I might forget all the embarrassment I'd caused before, and even helped me look back at each event one by one. Tell me, if I really lost my memory, do you think I'm so stupid that I wouldn't be able to find out exactly what happened? Xin Haoyue replied. Seeing him still dazed, she concluded, if you were as influential and powerful as Chen Xinan, I'd know your name too. Mao Xiuan was partly deceived, but he didn't fully take in what she just said. He just thought that the way she talked sounded familiar. Xin Haoyue looked at his frozen expression, one which seemed to be unsure of the validity of her claim. She interrupted him. What's the matter? Mao Xiuan forgot about why he wanted to look for her in the first place. Instead, he began laughing and took out his phone. He moved closer and said smugly, in a quiet voice, Watch this. Xin Haoyue was confused. Did he come all the way here just to show her a video? Was Mao Xiuan really that casual? She looked surprised, but Mao Xiuan already placed the phone in her view on the table in front of them. Look. First, she saw the green tree near the library. Just as she thought it was familiar, she suddenly saw herself in the video with Ji Yi. She was shocked to hear her voice, easily recognizable, despite the distance. You guessed right. I'm not willing to have any relationship with anyone or anything related to Chen Xinan. Even if he left the school, I wouldn't be willing to mention the architecture department or even the student unions. All you did was borrow the light Chen Xinan left behind. While Xin Haoyue exclaimed this, she didn't know that she had spoken with such passion, or rather, such a decisive tone. Hearing it made her dazed. When she finally reacted, she hurriedly tried to grab the phone on in order to destroy the video. What was Mao Xiuan thinking when he recorded this video? Xin Haoyue felt an unbelievable awkwardness, seeing herself on video in someone else's phone, especially without her permission. She was angry, but even angrier that Mao Xiuan was quicker than her. Shit! Xin Haoyue wanted to curse. Badly. Mao Xiuan was satisfied seeing her reaction and teased, Don't think about deleting it. I already sent it to Anan anyways, so there's no use deleting it. Mao Xiuan, you've got a serious problem. Xin Haoyue's chest ached in pain due to anger. One after another, the people in the book kept looking for trouble with her. What were their intentions? She finally calmed herself down and coldly asked, "What do you mean?" When Mao Xuan heard her tone, he was shocked for a moment. "Why are you acting so serious?" Xin Haoyue felt that she was about to be schemed endlessly by them. "Why are you sending this to Chen Xinan?" Mao Xuan hurriedly placed his phone in his pocket to prevent her from stealing his phone. Once he believed it was safe, he replied, "I'm helping you." "Helping me?" Xin Haoyue's voice turned colder. "Forgive me because I don't understand how you're helping me by your actions." Mao Xuan was amused by her tone. "Ah, I noticed that you became much more interesting after the fall semester." Xin Haoyue rolled her eyes. "If you think I became interesting after my fall, then you should try falling down the stairs as well." As someone who wanted to avoid physical injuries, Mao Xuan immediately retorted, "I didn't do anything wrong." Xin Haoyue silently looked at him without reply. Meanwhile, Mao Xuan tried to worm his way closer to her. "I'm really trying to help you." Xin Haoyue coldly humphed. "Mao Xuan, I didn't know that you have a hobby of secretly recording other people. I would do a disservice to myself if I didn't capture such an amazing moment," Mao Xuan said with confidence. Xin Haoyue felt that if she could shoot arrows out from her eyes, this student would already have 10,000 arrows stabbing through his heart. Mao Xuan laughed. "Don't be anxious. Listen to me as I explain." Xin Haoyue wasn't interested. "Thank you very much, but I don't believe that there are any benefits for me for listening to you. However, I do know that you're just enjoying this show and treating me as amusement for yourself." Mao Xuan laughed. "Indeed, I like to watch the show, especially when it involves both Chen Xinan and you. Not only did you successfully attract Chen Xinan's attention with your words, what was most important was that he would know your truthful thoughts. If you really don't like him anymore, then he wouldn't think too badly of you from now on." Xin Haoyue didn't feel the same way as he did. "Since I don't like him, why should I care about how he thinks of me?" Mao Xuan felt that there was something wrong. How was he supposed to respond to her remark? Xin Haoyue knew that she was right and continued. "You misunderstood my intentions. From the beginning, I didn't have any intentions of attracting Chen Xinan's attention." "What?" Mao Xuan was shocked. "Weren't you pursuing him to the point where you would only marry him this life?" Xin Haoyue chuckled. "Times have changed, plus I lost my memory, remember?" As she childishly blinked her big eyes, Mao Xuan was stunned, not knowing how to react to her action. Xin Haoyue subconsciously realized that it was out of character for her to act like this, so she softly coughed and emphasized, "Anyways, don't mention Chen Xinan in front of me again. You should know that nothing will happen between Xinan and I. He loved Sheng Wenyang." As if Mao Xuan had just suddenly realized something, he asked, "So you gave up on him halfway because of Sheng Wenyang?" He continued, "No, didn't you lose your memory? How did you know about her? Plus, you already knew about Sheng Wenyang in the past, and I even reminded you about that out of kindness, but you still ignored my advice. You told me that you're not afraid of a person who isn't even in the country right now, and that you will win Nan's heart while she wasn't here." Xin Haoyue waved her hands. "I really don't remember everything that I've said. Ji was the one who told me about Sheng Wenyang." She looked at Mao Xuan, trying to verify the truth. "Didn't they say that they were in love with each other?"